Right, so we're back working on the Astra today. In the last video, if you watched it, you remember we stripped the head down, looked at everything, and everything looked okay. We then looked at the bottom half of the engine, and I finished the video by saying this. So I'm going to mill over what the best solution is to go from here on out. Do I put a different engine in? Do I put a bigger engine in? Do I make it into even more of a project? So I'm going to have a think about it, and I'll let you guys know what I decide at some point. Now, having had to think about it for a few days, I've decided that what I'm going to do is I'm going to rebuild the engine instead of replacing the engine. What I mean by that is the piston rings do need replacing, and a load of people were telling me just to drop a new engine in it, but that's boring. You don't learn a lot from doing that. So what I'm going to do is remove the pistons, go to the bottom of the engine, strip down, remove the pistons, replace the rings, rehone the bores, put the pistons back in, and then rebuild the engine completely, pretty much. The reason I'm going to do it that way is because I just want to learn. I've never done piston rings before, I've never taken pistons out of an engine before, so it's all going to be a learning experience. And if it does go right and the engine works properly afterwards, I'm going to be a lot more impressed with myself for rebuilding the whole engine than I am just chucking a second-hand one in. Not to mention a second-hand engine is like at least 300 quid. For a decent mileage one these days, so rebuilding it is actually the cheaper option. It's the more involved option, and it's probably going to produce the most content for the YouTube channel, which is kind of what this is all about. So I'm going to get the car jacked up, I'm going to remove the sump, probably going to have to move the exhaust out of the way, and then I can go ahead and get to removing the pistons. Now, I'm not going to remove the engine from the car. I'm going to make it a little bit more difficult for myself by leaving the engine in the car, or the bottom half of the engine in the car, and just work on it while it's up in the air. I just can't be bothered to take all the gearbox bolts out and all that sort of stuff. So I'm going to work on it in the car and see how we go. So I'm going to go ahead and get the thing jacked up, start taking some bits apart. Yeah, we'll see how we go. Now, before I get started on actually taking anything apart, I just want to let you know, I had a few people tell me to put a little bit of oil in each cylinder and see if it disappears. Now, I put about centimetre depth, probably about this much of oil in each cylinder. That was about 4 days ago, and as you can see in cylinder 1, the oil is absolutely disappeared, completely gone. So the piston rings on cylinder 1 are the worst, and in the other cylinders it's not actually much better. As you can see, you can probably see there's still a little bit of oil in each, probably about 2 millimeters worth of oil in that one, same, and then about the same in that one. So these ones aren't as bad, although they have leaked down, but cylinder 1, completely, the oil is just completely gone. So it's definitely the piston rings that are gone. Okay, so I've got the car jacked up on axle stands. So what I'm thinking is, I'm going to drop the exhaust down, so the middle hangers which are just here, I'm going to drop the exhaust off them so that it sits sort of lower down here. And then I'm going to drain all the oil out of the sump and then remove the sump. And then I should be able to get to the bottom end bolts to remove the pistons, and then I'll just push the pistons up and remove them out the top of the engine. That's my thinking. Then I can just rehone the bores, put new piston rings on, do a reversal of what I just said, put the thing back together, and then we should be good. That's sort of my plan. We'll see how well things go as we progress. Okay, so whilst the oil is just finishing draining, as you can see it's just dripping down a little bit, I'm going to go ahead and crack the sump pan bolts. Just go all the way around and crack them loose. There's also a couple that go to the gearbox that are holding it on. There's one there, and I think there's one around the back as well, so I'm going to take them out and we'll drop this oil pan down. I just want to point out, if you're doing this job yourself, on these engines, there's these two little bits here, one there, and there's a bolt up in there. I don't know if you can see in there, but if you stick your ratchet and socket out there, there's actually two bolts that are hidden, and they've usually got, if your engine hadn't been touched too much, these rubber grommets, and they sit inside there. You pull them out and then there's a bolt behind there. So if you're wondering why you can't get your sump off, a lot of times there's one bolt there and then one all the way up there. You can just get your finger up there. Right, so I believe I've got all the sump bolts out. These are the ones that go on the gearbox and these ones that go sort of around the outside of the sump. So what I'm going to attempt to do now is just use like a soft faced, like a dead blow hammer or rubber mallet or something. I've just got this one and I'm just going to knock on the sump on the side gently and try and pop this thing off and bring it gently to the floor. There you have it. There is one sump. They can be a little bit tricky to get off. I ended up having to use a little bit of pry bar, a little bit of hammer, and just sort of wiggling it. If these haven't been off for a long time, depending how they've been put on, whether they've been put on with a gasket or a sealant. This one looks like it hasn't even got a gasket on it. Looks like it's just been sealed with some silicone sealant. So there's the dipstick, there's the oil pickup, and there's our crankshaft with our pistons. Looks pretty good. So the next thing I want to do is I want to undo the piston rod bearings, I think they're called. And as you can see, we've got cylinder 2 and cylinder 3 at the bottom, because I've got the engine at top dead center at the minute. So number 1 is going to be at the top, number 4 is going to be at the top, and then you've got 2 and 3 which are in the middle. So I'm going to undo these and take these caps off, and then what I'll do is I'll rotate the engine over so that 1 and 4 comes down, undo them, and then I should be able to take all 4 of them out and then just push the pistons up through the top of the engine. Now these bolts are E10s, which is the same as what the sump bolts were, so I'm assuming they're going to be quite tight. So I'm just going to crack them loose. That's one. They're not actually too tight, funnily enough. 2, 3, 4. Alright, going to take these out now. Just got to remember which way they go in, so I'm going to keep them the correct orientation. Right, there's one of the bearings there, came off that way. Number 2. Okay, so we've now got piston number 4 down, and you can't see it but just off the screen here, piston number 1's also down. So I'm going to take these out and do exactly the same. Okay, so that's all the bottom bearings for the pistons out with the bolts. I've sort of lined them up as they came off the car. And what I should be able to do now is literally just push up on the bottom of the piston and push it straight out of the top of the engine. And there you go, that is piston number 4 out of its cylinder. To be honest with you, don't really know what I'm looking for when it comes to what shape the rings are in. I mean, the bottom ring, which I think is like the oil ring which stops the oil from coming up, does look like it's quite flat. I don't know if it's because it's meant to be like that or what. But I'm going to go ahead and take all the other 3 out. You don't need to see me do that. And then figure out how to replace the rings, because I actually don't know how to do it quite yet. Right, I'm quite happy with that. I'm having a quick ice cream break. Good old twister. I'm quite impressed with how easy those pistons were to actually remove. I've never done it before, especially I've never done it on a car. I think I did it when I was stripping down an old engine a couple of years ago. I've never actually done it whilst the engine's still in the car, so it's all a learning experience. It's all going good so far though. What's good about the stage that I'm at now is everything from here on out is sort of rebuilding. I've done all the tearing down that I think I'm going to have to do, so everything else is just going to be preparing and rebuilding, honing out the cylinders, putting the new piston rings on, and then rebuilding the head, put it all back together, and then we can see if it's going to work. So I think what I want to get done for the rest of today's video is get the old piston rings off, make sure that my piston rings are all gapped properly, put the new piston rings on, and I'd also like to hone the cylinders today as well. I don't know how much time I've got. It's already sort of later in the afternoon now, so I'm going to try and get as much done as I can today, because I really want to get the bottom of this engine all put back together so I can start working on the head. Right, so with the pistons out now, obviously we've got the cylinders that I need to hone, so I think that's going to be the next thing I do before I tackle doing the piston rings. I want to get these cylinders ready to get the pistons back in basically. So I'm hoping that I'm going to be able to hone out any of the score marks in this cylinder 4 which I showed you before, and I'm going to give the rest of them a hone as well, because I might as well do it while I'm in here. Now I think you're supposed to take the crank out, but that is a heck of a lot more work than I am willing to do, so I'm going to stick some tissue down the bottom of the bores so to cover the crank, just so if any little bits of pieces of metal go down there, that will catch it. And then obviously I'll clean it out afterwards, spray it all with brake clean so that I get rid of all small pieces of metal that might be in there still. So I'm going to go ahead and get the hone, get it set up. The bores have already got oil on them from when I did my test. They're already coated in oil, so we're pretty much ready to go. Get my drill, get the honing tool, and see what we can do with these cylinder walls. Okay, so this is what we're going to be using to do our engine honing. Obviously I've just got a normal battery powered drill, and this is the honing tool I've gone for. I went for a Draper cylinder hone. Draper's always been good to me when it comes to tools, so this is what it looks like. Strange looking contraption. You stick that end on the drill, obviously that bit goes in the bores. There's a little spring clip in there to take off, and then these ping out and sit against the cylinder walls. Turn the drill on, go in and out, up and down, a bit like that, and that should provide us with a decent crosshatch on our cylinder walls, ready for the new piston rings to seat up against. Right, let's give this a go. Never done this before, so if my technique is awful, don't judge. Okay, so I just want to show you a little sort of before. They do have a little bit of crosshatch on them still, but they are quite glazed and they're quite shiny, so I might as well do it while I've got the pistons out. And as you can see, I've put a bit of tissue in each cylinder to catch as much of the rubbish as I can, and then obviously I'll clean it out afterwards with some brake clean, just to get rid of any small particles that's still in there. See what we can do. Okay, so there's the cylinder after it's been honed, and I would say that that looks like a pretty decent crosshatch. If you compare it to sort of the next one along, you can see how shiny this one is. It's barely sort of picking anything up, but this one's got a lovely sort of crosshatch effect on it now, which is exactly what we're going for. This is what we want. The cylinders aren't meant to be shiny. That sort of happens over time. They're meant to have this sort of matte finish to them, a little roughness, and so you can see those lines, and you can see how they crisscross over each other. So I'm going to go ahead and do that to all the other cylinders, and I'll show you cylinder 4 specifically because that's the one with the scoring going up and down. The other two should be nice and easy, but I'll definitely show you this one afterwards. I'm hoping that this honing is going to get rid of any of those scores that are in cylinder 4. So let's give it a go. So there we go, there's cylinder 1. There is cylinder 2, I don't know how well you can see it on the camera, just trying to focus. Cylinder 3, and then the big one, cylinder 4. Now you can just about still see that scoring there, but you can no longer feel it. Before I could catch my nail in it, but now you can't feel it, it's there. It's just sort of a little bit visual. But it wasn't actually leaking oil anyway from the back of the piston, it was all happening at the front, so I'm really not that worried about that. But I'm actually quite pleased with how this whole honing of the cylinders came out, because I've never done it before. Completely new experience. It's actually really easy. So yeah, very happy with that. Alright, so I think that's going to about do me for today. It might be a little bit of a shorter video than usual, but I just wanted to get something out there because I haven't uploaded for a little while as well. I feel like that's quite a good sort of point to stop now that I've got the pistons out. I've got the cylinders honed now, so that's all now ready to be put back together. So in the next one, what I'm going to do is I'm going to put the head back together. I'm also going to put the new piston rings on. That'll be one video, and then in the next video I'll go ahead and put the engine back together because there's a couple of things I need to order. I need to order a new sump gasket because this one didn't have one and I haven't got one in my kit. And there's a couple other little bits as well that I just want to order ready for when we put things back together. So yeah, there we go. Hope you guys enjoyed this. This stuff, although it looks daunting, is actually quite simple if you do a little bit of research and you know what you're doing. People will sort of fray away from touching the pistons or doing any of that stuff, but as long as you're careful and you're clean and you're organized, this stuff is all quite self-explanatory. It's all quite easy. I'm not a mechanic and I can do it, so if I can, you can as well. So get stuck in, get your hands dirty. But yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed this one. Make sure you give a thumbs up if you did. It helps me out a lot. Make sure you subscribe for future content. Anybody that's waiting on stickers still, I'm still waiting on my sticker guy to send me some. So as soon as they come in, I've been waiting now for nearly a week since I ordered the new ones. So anybody that's waiting, really do apologize, but it's completely out of my hands. I'm waiting on my guy to send me the stickers. It's just been a little bit of a slow process. So as soon as I get them, obviously I'll be sending them out. Make sure you follow me on Instagram. That's where I post pictures as I go along, so you'll see pictures of this before this video even comes out. So make sure you follow me on there to keep up to date, and I'll see you in the next one.